Hey, Crazy Will here today. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between 3D printers, FDM versus resin. Which one is the best for you? Stay tuned. We're going to go through them. Crazy Will here from Crazy Will's Tech Show. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the different types of 3D printers that are out there for consumers. We're going to be looking at an FDM printer and a resin 3D printer. I'm going to tell you the difference between these two different printers, tell you the pros, tell you the cons, and see which one is the right one for you. So if you're thinking about getting into 3D printing, this is definitely the video for you. So currently, there are two different types of 3D printers out there for consumers, like you or me, the average Joe Blow. We got the FDM printer, which I went with the Ender 3 because that's the most popular FDM printer out there at this current time, and I went with the Elegoo Mars for a resin 3D printer because that is the most popular at this current time. Both printers run around $250, although right now the Elegoo is going for $190. Missed out on that deal. I paid $250. Now, I bought these printers myself. Well, one my wife bought me and then the other one I bought myself. So they were not given to me. I'm not sponsored by anyone. This is just my own experience. So let's go into how these printers work. What they basically do is they build layers over time to create objects you can use. The first one is a resin 3D printer, the Elegoo Mars. Now, this is the first 3D printer I ever owned. I loved it and I've been using it for about 9 months now. Did quite a bit of 3D printing on it, which you can see my full review on this 3D printer right here. Now, this uses resin, which is basically a liquid photosensitive plastic. So basically, when UV light hits this UV plastic, it hardens. It has a motor that brings that plunger up and down, and that is the build plate right here. There's a vat with a see-through film that you put resin into, and an LCD screen that is blacked out from a UV light from the bottom, which the LCD screen blocks out patterns so the UV light can come through and cure the first layer of resin. And then the plunger will move up, usually around 0.05 millimeters, and then print the next layer, and so forth and so on until you have an object. Now, being that this is liquid, it actually makes really smooth prints, so you can get that layer height really thin. Now, we're going to be talking about FDM printing, and this is my Ender 3. It's the basic stock Ender 3. I did a little bit add-ons here and there that I 3D printed. Nothing spectacular. It's basically stock. I've been playing with this one for about 2 months now. If you'd like to see the video of my experience of going through getting the Ender 3 and putting it together and going through the process of your first prints, you can take a look at that video right here. Now, the way this printer works, and you can see it right up there, it works with a spool of filament, and it's in plastic right now because you do have to worry about moisture getting to the plastic. See, that's the spool. Not sponsored. Like Hatchbox, the best so far out of all the filaments I've tried, and I've tried quite a few already. And the silver, this silver is amazing. Made a Terminator arm, check that out. So basically, it extrudes that spool of filament with several motors. One is the extruder motor, which feeds the filament through, and the other motors are moving the nozzle back and forth and the bed back and forth. Now, most of them have a heated bed and a heated hot end. So, you know, if you want to print in several materials, a heated bed is not necessary, but it's better for filament adhesion. You want to make sure that it's going to stick to the bed. So basically, how it works is it's like a hot glue gun, guys. It melts the plastic and builds layers, draws out layers on the build plate, and then builds up on itself until you have your object. This one actually works at a 0.4 millimeter height. So detail, not the greatest, but you can reduce that. There are tricks that you could do to get that smooth finish. Now, I will say for consumers, this printer has been out quite a few years. This is basically what people think of when they think of 3D printing. Now, these printers do have their pros and cons. Let's start with the Elegoo Mars. Pros! The Elegoo Mars has super smooth detail. I mean, I can't express it enough, guys. If you're into real close, like model kind of detail, you can't beat the Elegoo Mars. Really easy to set up. You basically take it out of the box. It's kind of ready to go other than the bed leveling. Bed leveling on this is super easy. I mean, it's 2 screws and it has send it home, you put a little piece of paper in there, it smushes down, you tighten the 2 screws. It's a joke, guys. You can reuse the leftovers. So anything that's in that vat that's left over after you're done 3D printing, you pour it through a funnel with a sifter, you filter out all the crap, and you reuse the liquid. I do it all the time. It works great. Cons! It's not very strong material. It kind of breaks like glass, especially if you're making them hollow, but if you make them hard, they still break like glass, but they are a little stronger. Learning supports on this can be very cumbersome and very frustrating at times, and if you don't do them right, it will ruin your prints. There is a lot of cleanup. To clean the vat, you have to clean the plunger, and you have to be wearing gloves while you do this because it's essentially all toxic. Speaking of being toxic, you have to wear gloves, you have to wear a respirator, you don't want to be breathing this stuff in as you're using it, so, you know, and it can't touch your skin, or you could possibly have allergic reaction, cause irritation, and hurt your skin. Gotta be careful with this stuff, guys. Small build area. There are larger printers being made, but for the price point of $250, your build area is basically this. So it can go up a little higher, but that's your build area. You can't really watch the progress because usually it starts off in the vat and a lot of the liquid and the vat kind of cover your print, so you can't really watch it being print. When it gets to a certain point, you can see the results, but you can't actually see the layers being made. There are additional steps after you're done printing, like you need a curing box, and you gotta cure your prints after you're done in a UV light, and you gotta cure it, and I got a UV light and a spinner back here, you gotta spin it around, and so there are additional steps to finishing off the model. Now let's take a look at the Creality Ender 3 pros and cons. Pros! Very easy to print once you get everything set up correctly, which can take some time. But once you got it all set up and ready to print, it's very easy to print. Stronger plastic. This stuff is more like what you would expect plastic to be like. It is stronger, it can withstand more, and you can also get other materials that can be even stronger. But for this example, I'll be talking more about PLA. Loads of material to work from. You can do a wood type of material, you could do a rubber type of material, you can do a carbon fiber type of material. So there's lots of options for material for the Ender 3. You could set up a Raspberry Pi like I have with Octopi, and if you want to see that video, you can look at it right here, and control it remotely and wirelessly, which really comes in handy. If you have a setup like mine where you have smart plugs hooked to it, you can turn it on from your house, load the file, and hit print, and get it started right away, which is really, really convenient and cool. This is really fun to watch. I really enjoy watching it, build it layer by layer, drawing it out. It's a lot of fun to see what's going on, and if something goes wrong, you can actually see what's going wrong, opposed to the Elegoo where it's in a vat. If something's going wrong, you don't realize it until you pause the print, and if you pause the print, you risk it. It'll show a layer line if you stop the print. Really large build area. I mean, that is a really nice size build area. I believe it's 250 by 250, and I'll put it down below what the actual build area is. There's lots of upgrades and customization that you could do with the Ender 3. They sell a lot of extra components where you can change out a lot of the parts and make them better. You can make the wheels better. You could put a filament brake detector in this. You could upgrade the hot end if you want. You could upgrade the bed. You could do a lot of different things. And a lot of these upgrades you can actually 3D print. Fan cover, and then even I 3D printed all those rails inside the rails there, so that way it would have color like that little red that you see. Cons! Kind of hard to get great detail out of this without showing layer lines. So that's one of the drawbacks, is when you 3D print with this layer lines, to try and get it smaller, you could either change out the head. I'm just talking from the perspective of a standard head that comes with this, which I believe is 0.4 millimeters extruder head. The detail isn't as fine as you're going to get on the Elegoo. Bed leveling. Oh my god, it can be very, very frustrating when you're a newbie at bed leveling on the Ender 3. It can be very challenging. Nothing's perfectly flat, and you have to try to adjust it, and you know, if you don't have that little touch of just getting it just right, it can be very frustrating because you don't know whether you're putting it down too hard or you're putting it too thin, and it takes quite a bit of time and finagling to get it just right level. But once you get it there, you really don't have to touch it unless you move the printer or you see something going wrong with the prints, then it's possibly level your bed. Lots of things things can go wrong. There's quite a few motors, quite a few sprockets with screws and stuff can come loose, which I experienced this if you watched my video. A lot of things can go wrong with this. I've had a hard time trying to find the right filament. I've done a lot of Amazon returns in the last few months playing with this 3D printer. So far, Overture, Hatchbox, and I'm actually playing with a new one now called Tech Bear. Those have been pretty good, and that's another thing that you guys have to worry about is the Tech Bear like to be at a higher temperature. So sometimes you have to set this, like normally it's 200 that I print at. The Tech Bear like 210. I think I gotta up bed heat as well. But it's adjustable, you just have to finagle with filament. Wasn't the easiest to set up. If you're not a technical person, setting up this 3D printer can be a little challenging. I mean, I enjoyed it, I like it, but it's, you know, you're not taking it out of the box and just throwing it on your counter and starting a print. You actually have to put this one together, and that's why the price point is actually pretty low. Now, both these printers need to be in the right temperature for the filament or the resin to print correctly. The resin won't cure and the filament won't cure correctly if it's too cold in the room. Now we're gonna go into print pricing. Resin, I get this, it's about 1,000 grams of liquid. To give you an idea, it comes really packaged nicely. This cost me about 30 bucks. It's by Elegoo. I prefer to print in gray. You also have to account with the resin printer, gloves, paper towels, and cleaning supplies like alcohol and mean green, or simply green is what I use, the mean green alternative. Now resin comes into 7 different colors, and there's also a type that I've used that says it's ABS-like, was a little bit stronger. I'm hoping in the future they'll have more types of resin that will make it stronger. Now for the Ender, we use filament. Now these come in all different shapes and sizes as well, and different price points, but on average they're around $30 a spool. I've been lucky lately and I've been getting them for $20 a spool, which is really nice. Been name brands too, which I'm shocked. This is my go-to brand now. But like I said earlier, you can get them in rubber, you can get them in wood, you can get them in all different types. I'm only going to be talking about PLA because that's really what I have experience with so far. I did try PET G, did not have very good luck with it. I think that's because I need a glass bed, and it should be sealed because this does not like moisture. From what I've gathered, price-wise, I get 3 to 4 times more from the FDM printer opposed to the resin printer. So basically your stuff's gonna be 3 to 4 times more expensive on the Elegoo opposed to the FDM Ender 3 printer. That has been my experience, and I did Google it and I found out that I'm not the only one that kind of thinks that way. I did notice the spool lasted a lot longer than my resin. Both printers use STL files. Basically an STL file is just a 3D object that is on usually Thingiverse or My Mini Factory. You can download them from there. They both have their own slicing software. Now I got this question quite a few times. You can't just print an STL file on these printers. You have to put it through a slicing software. For the Elegoo, it is ChitoBox, and you bring it into that slicing software and you slice it up and export it out into their file format, which I can't remember at this time, but I'll put right down below. And I have a video on that you could watch right here. Now the Ender uses another program. It is called Cura, and you take the STL file and slice it up, and that is actually a G-code file. You transfer it to the printer. This one uses a USB, this one uses a micro SD card. You can put it on that way. I've hooked them both up with Pis, so that way I could transfer files to both of them from the comfort of my living room. Both programs have a little bit of a learning curve to learn how to use them, how to navigate in them a little easier. Once you get into them, it gets easier, and if you watch people on YouTube like myself or others, another guy that I really like that I've watched a lot on Cura is actually the guy Chip from Filament Friday. Now there are other programs for both of these out there. I am just telling you the free ones and the most popular because they're free. I would highly recommend before you get one of these 3D printers to download the software and play with it and see what it's like to use. Now let's talk about resolution, guys. I've been talking and I want to show you prints. I did this for my own personal several reasons. I wanted to see what the difference between the resolution between the two of them would be, because I know the Ender can do really good resolution. I just know Elegoo does it effortlessly. The first thing I printed was an Iron Man, and that is the standard 4mm height. So just give you guys a look. You can kind of see he's a little rough. I did paint these all the same color. I painted them with silver, and that was done with Overture filament, which is another really good filament that I like. You can see the layer lines. So I said, you know what, let's up it. So I went to the next level of resolution. I believe it was 0.2 millimeters. Took like 3 times the amount of time, and this is what I came up with. So there's the Iron Man, same print with the higher resolution. This is the Iron Man on the Elegoo, and this actually took less time to print, which I have a little technique that I used, and you can see that video here. It cuts the time in half to print, and it's actually at 0.1 millimeter height, layer height. So I didn't do this in the full resolution, but you can see there's no comparison. The Elegoo definitely wins as far as resolution. As I took this Iron Man out, I chipped off his finger. That's why I say this stuff is like glass. Like, I could toss this across the room. Yeah, it might break, but it won't break and shatter like this one would. The Elegoo, you can't beat the detail on that one. It's night and day, guys. I'll be honest with you. Now, where it will shine with detail is when you make them bigger. That's where the resolution looks pretty good. Now, this is a giant size Iron Man, and it's a little harder to see the layer lines. And I'll grab the Elegoo, and we'll put this right next to each other. This was 50%, and this is 100%. And you can see the detail is a lot better. So bigger prints is where this is going to shine. Now, another question I had was paint. How is this stuff going to work with paint? With the layer lines, is it going to be harder, or will it make it look better? Well, I did 2 Yodas, one with the resin, and then this is another thing that's a little bit annoying with the resin, is I hollowed this one out, so it's still leaking. But here you can see there is Yoda, and you can see the detail on Yoda there. And then I did this print and painted it as well, and this was done with the FDM printer. And I gotta say, you could see there's a difference, but with the paint, it's pretty close. I mean, you know, this is definitely way smoother, and my paint job isn't the greatest, but I was just trying to test it. And if you want to see how to paint the way I paint these, or just the techniques that I use, or the paints that I use, you can take a look at that video right here. And they weren't that hard to paint. They were both really pretty easy to paint. I thought with the layer lines this one was going to be difficult, but it wasn't. So let's talk about supports. They both need supports to print certain things. Basically what we're worried about is island. An island is, for example, Iron Man here has his hand out, and there's nothing under there from the base plate to his arm that can be printed on. His legs, his base is all being printed on top of itself. But when you get to his hand or his arm, which is out, it's away from everything, there's no way to print it. So with the Ender, we're going to talk about the Ender supports first. You have to worry about gravity, and you have to worry about a little bit of sagging too. So what you have to do is you would have to put a support under the arm out here that would ultimately touch the base plate and touch the actual bed of the printer, and you'd have to put that in and make sure that it has supports. Now, I find that the supports break off pretty easily on this, except for when it goes around kind of Iron Man, or if you have to put around his foot, it can be very frustrating to break those off. You have to use snippers. It can be a little cumbersome. Now, the Elegoo Mars, as far as supports, there are several things you have to worry about. You have to worry about supports, and you have to worry about suction. So it's working with against gravity, just like the Ender, but it's also working with suction because you have kind of a vacuum situation going on with the liquid and the actual build plate moving up and down, so suction can happen. What does that mean? That if you try to print this flat, if you print this flat on the bed, it probably prints not that thick. It's building it layer by layer, so there is suction, and it may round off the edges. Normally, when you're doing stuff like this, I do it at a 45-degree angle just so it's building at a certain angle. That way there's less suction, there's less forces pushing against it, so it's less build areas. Now, if you put it right on the build plate, you may not have those problems, but you may still have suction around the corners. So it's kind of a trial and error thing when it comes to this. And also, again, we have to worry about islands. That would be an island, that would be an island. And if you put it at a 45-degree angle, there's going to be lots of islands, and it can be challenging, and it can be a lot of fun to try and figure out what you can do to make your print work good. So what printer is for you guys? Which one should you go with? Which one's better? Well, it depends, guys. Do you want to print miniatures and collectible things? You know, smaller things? I would go with the Elegoo Mars. Now, if you're printing prototypes or cosplay outfit parts or things around the house and you need strength, I would go with the Creality Ender 3. It all depends on your needs, and I hope I helped you figure out what your needs are and which one to go with. If there's anything I missed or there's something else you would like to know, please put a kind comment down below and let me know, so that way I can cover it maybe in a future video, or maybe we'll revisit this, I don't know, but please let me know. We're all learning here. I'm learning, you're learning. Share, guys, share. That's what's gonna make this stuff awesome. I want to take this moment to give a special thanks to my avid watchers and subscribers and people that really like my videos. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for the little bit of money that I make from YouTube, I probably wouldn't have what you guys see behind me here. I have to thank my wife because she bought me the Elegoo Mars and got me started with this, but I have to thank you guys for actually watching, subscribing, liking, commenting. It's actually making me a little bit of revenue to supply my little habits, which that's all I really wanted in the beginning, and I really truly thank you. You guys made this nerd really, really happy. So thank you to you guys out there, and a special thanks to my wife, who is in the background all the time, guys. She's constantly watching every one of these videos, making sure I got things spelled correctly, make sure that I'm not rambling on too long. She's really an unsung hero in all of this. That's it for me, guys. Hopefully this video helped you, and if it did, make sure you like, subscribe, and if you want to see more of my videos, ring that bell so you get notified when I make a new one. And remember, you could do anything if you put your mind to it. Later, guys. You can make pretty cool stuff with 3D printers. This isn't a Marvel movie, guys. There's no secret ending, no strategy or something. Just hit like and subscribe, and maybe click on one of the videos above. Don't know what to tell you.